Bitilo with Mfali Federa. You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Federa. You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Federa. You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Federa.
Assalamu alaikum bari na lalu ngali kontong ngali bismillah na Bitilo kibaro jang Allah bari malum Mfali Federa ngali kontong bi Januari karotili muang anin seola mbeni sang men kono men benta arbalu fe nga atol men moy ka radio to Gambia banko kam album moy kam Vibes FM le 106.1 FM atol men faram ben jibe kan dulal to internet to album moy kan Bitilo le for Facebook lem YouTube TikTok wara Instagram an kontanten se wota ngal be sura jang kal bismillah jandrong kondalta ka kenyameng bi arabo fanam ngal luntam buñari mbale sura jang men keda Sona Jobarteh Sona keda motimi alon ko ala kuma nukum moma Gambia banko kan ato bota ay dunia bebeng an kontante ngatir sura jang Sona mu jeli ngala balati ata mu Kora jaloliti ay simfal mentala balwo kono nim fanan ala dindiya be nyaadile anin kul men yalon ko atamata wala fafudata afurata tembo men to Bitilo la faduna wala kono bar kondalta ka ke nyamen drom mbadi ngolu be men kala wala mu kadaba ke nga jibe ke kunto kibaro la ngamen sura janni wonata dron sina dum kachanin kono. Hello, greetings to you wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to Bitilo Kibaro podcast. My name is Mfali Federa. Tonight we have a special conversation with the one and only Sona Jobarteh, a Gambian Kora global icon whose music has carried our culture to stages all around the world. But beyond the global acclaim, many people don't fully know her story, her personal journey, I mean, from childhood, her family roots, and what it truly took to, walk a path that no woman ever did before. So tonight we're going to slow things down, get to know Sona, the person, the artist, and the Gambians she carries with her everywhere around the world. Sona, we are really, really excited to have you join us tonight on Bitilo. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The network is not the best, but I'm hearing you okay, a little bit.
I can hear you perfectly well from my end too. Thank you very much, Sona. Mbadi ngol kondalta ka kinyamen kadaba ke ngajibe ke kunto kibarolla nga menu soto jandron ni botala dron sina muru ngana dum kacha kono kacha me alon ko ning Sona Jobarteh bo wala soto jang kondalta ka kinyamen jam Bitilo. Na kunto kibarol to bi standard news banga kibaro men muta woto wala muko mentata kanyam fo karandila ke keme men yalon ko wolel be bankola foni karola e ko wolel be balambay tan do ke kanyin tembenna e be balambay tan do ke kam menna wala mu e ko la allowance la jobaliade waketa fentika fme ko hard to reach allowance aketa allowance me yalon ko man sakunda ka di tichal men yalon ko e be karandiro ke kam bankola santodo sate woldo ananyam fensifa ko tangol ya tani je ko nyin karandila keme anintan karandila keme anintan nim fulolum iko wolube karando ke kan karam mol mentu bebe foni lokono berefet le mu kanuma jomo kunda kata fo kandonku bulanjor jakoy bantanjang wo karam ngol teacher so lel ko ni imanta karandiro ke la kamur kala sumo kono ni ngatra la alawanso manjo eko ila alawanso nying ajulo membe masakunda la sile ka karsaba sile ya tani je ko no dum manjo manta murlan stabrika ma area council lamenti alon ko la chairman ning alfal men beje wole kankularo ke ko iko 2025 sangola nyin santambilan kono eko ko do men soto namu kaningola karola manami kodo men dunta brikama area council soto bulo la karola fanna jamalto namol bo kono ikata kanyena fo dalasi million kemefula dalasi million tan saba anin nani wona take fendi malon ko e ko wole siata 2020 ko dalasi wuli tankon million tankonondo ko kibarul yaita ni nyamena yankuba dun ibrabe dem kan sanda newspaper ko me yatinna yeni nyon ko do nankamo dundino birkama area council kono ko me yew sabu wala mu ya lonne ila namul kabo damen menu nyanta jola ni nyanta men jola ninku ma ko yiri karole ke yo be long wala be ma ko kam nimbororo nga jibe ke kibar la membe ding ministre membe maraling musol ni din wala kola gambe banko kan atele bayro ke ko kuma kan wala men be fo kan ko president NPP la nying 50 million women enterprise fund ako wale ako woning man sakunda women enterprise fund mello e manke kilinta kala fala ko senendi aku katum mo jamale ya muta ko tumando bato ku kilingole NPP bo wala ke kan ako manke kilindi e manyo soto fenna kayta ni nyamenna ako women enterprise fund memba tala ministre bunda ko ako dalasi million tani lule kadum wo kono sango sam anda ko fenne melon ko kabo mansa kundala budo bala ko nyindo bo fango boda NPP le budu ni mboro nga jibe ke kibar la membe dending Ibrahima Jarala akera kiwata la kiba jenna di gembe banko kam kibaro le aytani je ko atele dum ya adokuti kotolu samba kityo la kafmede ko King FM ay samba kityo la ko kadum ya bayni nyala la mennin sarto manta sarto me alon ko ani kambenta walla o dalilo kambala ko abe kadin ke kan dalasi million tanni bulu o seke jusi nyaburangoti kadate kan e ko memma la lati wala mulamin je dabo di biriya kumandi ka nyinin ka ko kesola ako abe isitala min jeda waya ko be senandima mbadi ngol limboro ngata bursubi magistrates court damante alon ko ye fondinke do la kito keje ye busarula kan ko sanji fulabe wala la bunjawoto anin kolaya kabintu mo men kay mo le tajidinta tilimbalia baramo kono police ko september kono burfu sato kono e ko ata nyim buba giana boytam mo kan kafme ko mamadi giana so murola a karakuloto amara karola barama nya sangarala bankola molo ko sede nani kumande sede jaro la kiti bu ngokono kela tumirol senendi nimboro do ngada kan fi magistrates court damenti alon ko saliw gela kito be kekanje e sobita ko atele mobun kidola fajara night club kono e ko lokun dandandu commando kibaro le aytani je ko ate dunge membung wala mo Muhammad Buhari mendidi kala fta falale ye wala tumirola kam ya magistrate court nya bali bella e ko katum ya tumi bunda menna bunda sangarele mu kisi sulobe keke na man kum fa folo o kambala ko be kango di la prasta la burkono folo fa janning ila kitobe wutula mbadi ngol ko nga fa nyamen be kum faro kala na Bitilo kibaro ni murtala ndrom nsina bula kacha kono ning Sona Jobarteh na dun kacha kono ko nga fa le nyamen.
You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Federa. You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Federa.
Good evening and welcome once again to Bitilo. We're live also on radio in Gambia, Vibes FM 106.1 FM, broadcasting from Manjai. Sona, to begin this conversation, I just wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite Mandinka expression, and what is that? Is that something, any expression that you probably learned from your grandmom? Because I am aware that, you're pretty close to your grandmom. You speak so fondly of her. Is there any particular Mandinka expression that you learned from Bakumuna? Probably that could be a very good way to kind of, segue into the conversation.
Not necessarily like an expression, no. I mean, my grandmother, she passed away when I was young, so much time at that age to sit and converse with her as I wish I could. I think this is one of the things when people ask, if I could go back, what would I wish for? I think this is one thing I would say, to sit down and have a conversation with my grandmother. I hope you're hearing me.
Loud and clear.
Good, because I'm just scared because I'm not hearing you well. But yeah, it's one of my wishes to go back. But, as a kid, it was something that I grew up around with her, in the sense of her being a very central person in the family. And I think it taught from a young age what it means to be empowered as a woman, in the way that women are empowered, as we talk about sometimes about the disempowerment often of women in this country. But I would say the empowerment, actually, I learned from being around my grandmother as a young person, who was not developed enough to have a proper conversation with her, but in the sense of understanding that she commanded respect just from her being who she was. And I think we really felt something so deep when that was no longer around. And I would say the same actually about my grandfather. It actually wouldn't be to have a conversation with my grandfather. It wouldn't. For my grandmother, it would be to have a conversation with her as an adult. I would love that. But as my grandfather, I would say, oh, I love to play. I would love to play with him now, not as a child or a beginner. I would love the opportunity to actually learn from him now as a player. Because one thing I do know, and actually came from my grandfather, was that in order to remain successful in life, you should be prepared to understand you will die a learner. And I think that for me is, I think, something we should all learn from, no matter where you
profound,
get. Yeah, always understand that you are never ever going to, whatever the top is, you will never reach that. You will always just do your best. And I think that is something that is very important, that I've kept very much in my heart. And I wish, honestly, I could go back and learn, just sit down and learn from him. I really wish for that. But yes, my grandmother, absolutely a huge inspiration. But sadly, conversations, I was too busy playing football those days. Honestly, I was very obsessed about football. So I was always playing football. That's all I did. And I wasn't into Kora.
Well,
not into Kora like the way I am now. I was more into playing football.
Amazing. It's good to know that. What role did you play?
Sorry?
What role did you play as a footballer, as a soccer player?
Yeah, front. Strike.
A striker. Amazing. Sona, just a couple of quick questions before we delve deeper into the conversation. You travel the world constantly. What is one thing from Gambia that you carry with you wherever you go?
One thing, that's hard to say one. I carry a lot of things. But I mean, Kora is the obvious thing. It's not an obvious thing to say, but for me, the Kora is more than just an instrument, what it represents. And I think that for me is the reason I feel the instrument represents something that is far greater than me and far greater than, actually, it carries the legacy of hundreds of years of that we are very fortunate to be a very small part of. So with that, it comes with that humility, and that's why I think I take very cautiously, people who talk about mastering the Kora. And of course, I will be the first to say who I believe are my role models and who mastered that instrument. But at the end of the day, I would say we are in a tradition that rests on shoulders. We would not be learning today if it was not for this family tradition that has gone for generations. And we are only as great as those people who have carried us. You understand what I mean? So this is something that comes with, for me, a huge amount of respect. And the fact I've traveled all over Africa too has made me realize even more how amazingly lucky we are to have this tradition and to have this culture, because not all countries in this continent have preserved their history and their culture and their traditions the way we have. And so I think that's the reason for me. I think that we should not take that lightly as a nation. We should not take that lightly as a people, and we should own it and be incredibly proud of that. So I think that's when I say I carry the Kora with me. I carry that pride. I say that we have a culture that other places in Africa still look to, actually, with a lot of admiration as well. And I like to remind Gambians everywhere I go, this is something you should always be proud of. It's incredibly proud of.
Amazing. Sona, is there any Gambian artist you really admire and someone you genuinely would love to collaborate with someday? It could be the current crop of artists that we have, or anyone from back in the days.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, actually, because I'm entering a period now where I think more than ever before, I feel a little more ready to look into collaborations. I've been so occupied with the academy that I have here in the Gambia, that I honestly have not been able to put much energy into music. And it's ironic because most people know me as a musician and as an artist, but majority of my time is spent on running this institution and the work that I do in education. So there has been so many opportunities and exciting projects that I just have not been able to do, and because this priority has always taken first place for the last probably 5-6 years, I would say. So the most I could do was just release my album, which was terrible, difficult enough, because I didn't have the time, and that's why it took me 4 years just to release my own album. So anytime people started talking to me about collaborations, I was like, I can't. There's no way I can do it. So, but I'm now at a place where the academy is growing. It's starting to get to a place where it's starting to give me a little bit of freedom, a little bit of space to consider going back into music and exploring things that I feel excited about. And so, literally, just in the last month, I would say we just had a conversation with management to look at ideas of collaboration. So this is a very fresh and new conversation. So it's an interesting time when you asked me that question. So yeah, we are considering some collaborations, and I think some of the suggestions for I also love what somebody is doing at the moment. At this time, I like to always represent the kind of cultural side of things, and I also like to make sure that we inspire young people to stay true and honest to their own identity when it comes to finding a voice for themselves, and making sure that they understand that you can still be
it looks like we're having great difficulty with the internet connection. I don't know if you can you hear me from your end, Sona?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we missed a small part of that very important thing that you're mentioning there. If you can still hear me, I just wanted to, if you don't mind, to draw you back a bit. You said, in your considerations, there are suggestions that you're looking at, if I get you right. Is that something you want to get back to and probably, take again, because because of the connection, we were not able to get that clearly? Well, viewers and listeners, we are having some difficulty with the internet right now at the moment. The connection is not very strong. But like I said, we are really excited about this conversation. We are having Sona Jobarteh, the Gambian Kora global icon. We're trying to trace her journey, her childhood, her family connections, and what it took to take the Kora to, the global stage that she managed to so successfully do it. But we are trying to get Sona back up again. Mbadingolu ngali hakidani dorong me kolera sura kang internet dola karola. Bari mbe katake kan ka Sona selendi komen ka jamamol be hakilo blan dorong kon nin Sona jobale bejang, Sona jobatele bejang. Kora Jallo akira moti me alon ko gambe dingole ala kuma mo kumpa natel be kaja kam bari be kole asura kan internet wala kuoto al se hekata domandin dorong akada ke ka selendinam hani bi dorong atol membe moy kan radio vibes fm al nim Bitilo lemu al bari malom falli fadera atol min fanam ben jibe kan dulalto al nim Bitilo lemu kontantan se wota ngal be sore jang ko ngafa nyamen Sona Jobarteh lemu na luntamati Bitilo to jang a katabake banko korae bari ben kardo be ke kan kaje ko nga Sona selendi nan jang ko rek al selama do mandi nga jibe.
You're listening to Bitilo with Mfali Fadera.
It looks like we have Sona back on again. We apologize for that. We're having trouble with the internet connection at the moment. But Sona, I'm glad to have you back. Like I said, you were really talking about something very important and exciting about possibility of partnering and collaborating with local musicians back home in Gambia, if I get you right. So if I get you right too, I think you did mention that there are some suggestions that you are considering. Do you mind to elaborate on that?
I'm going to that was totally under excitement, and we have to also to those people see what is possible. So something, but I do want people is in the pipeline now. So I'm excited about that. It's very, very long.
Sona, if you can still hear us, I want us to start from the beginning, back to your childhood and foundation. Can you paint a picture of your childhood for us? Looking back now, was there anything you would say in your upbringing that unknowingly prepared you for the global journey that you are currently on?
Please repeat that question one more time. It just dropped a little bit halfway through.
Yeah, no, I was saying that, we're curious about your childhood and would love for you to paint a picture of your childhood for us. Looking back at things now, is there anything that you would say, as part of your upbringing, unknowingly prepared you for the global journey that you are currently on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you can drop in the chat if I drop out so I don't talk to myself. But no. Yes, the childhood for me was quite unique, quite different. And I think, although I would say it's something that I probably struggled with a lot, because of the fact that I was, straddling two very different cultures, from the Gambia and from the UK. But I'm very fortunate that it was in earlier childhood that I was mostly in contact with this culture here in the Gambia. And I believe that that is the reason why I have been able to pursue the career that I'm in now, because that's not something that is very easy to come to later in life, and I know many people who come for the first time, especially when they have roots in Africa, they come for the first time in their, in their later years or in their later teenage years. And it's a very different experience when you are not a child, when you have experiences here as a child growing up, you really feel the culture. It's not something you think about. It becomes normal, and it becomes something that becomes like an anchor for you. And I think that's what gave me also the orientation to not get too confused later in my teenage years when I entered into institutions in the UK, where it was very challenging years because of the fact that, at that time you really start to get confused with your identity because you suffer a lot of racism, which I did in the UK. You're constantly reminded that you're, foreigner, you're not, you're not British.
No, I was just saying, you're constantly reminded that you don't belong one way or the other.
Yeah, so right. And that really challenges you, and it definitely challenged me at a lot of those really critical times as a young person when we go through, 13, 14, 15. Those are really critical years where we start to try and figure out who am I? I'm no longer a kid anymore. And so being in an environment that was extremely critical of my identity and extremely excluding, I would say, as somebody that is not reminded that you are not one of us, But so the strength that I was able to get through with that was because at least I was accepted, right? And because of the strength of my family connections in the Gambia, I didn't question that, I don't need to be approved here in the UK. A strong sense of identity from I think that is the reason why people ask me why orientated this way, because that's the natural way that I've existed through life. I've never questioned my identity internally. I have struggled with not fitting in. I've been struggled immensely in Europe. This gave me a lot of ammunition later when I was in university to go into questions about identity. I got very involved in, the history of identity as Africans, you know, and this, I think, was what pushed me into African history and what pushed me into learning about history, because this helped to kind of make sense of that story. And I think in some way laid the foundations of what I now do with students here in the Gambia and young Gambians, in supporting them in that journey and making sure that they don't have to go through some of the difficulties that I went through, trying to figure out why, you know, there is equality in the way that it is. Racism obviously shows its face in Europe, but it also shows its face very endemically here in Africa, right? With the inequality that we see in terms of human rights, and the attitude to whether or not certain things should be seen as a basic human right rather than something that we are fortunate to receive through aid. And for me, that stems from the same inequality of looking at humans not as equal, as in unequal. So this becomes quite an important part of my education system here in the Gambia for young Gambians to understand their basic human rights on a global platform, not just within their community, but on a global platform. I think that's very important. We speak about that globally, not just within our communities.
So you speak so fondly of your dad and with great degree of admiration as well. What was it like growing up with him? I am aware, you know, your dad is a renowned Kora player himself. What are some of the things that you say is probably one lesson you would say you learn from him that you still carry with you on a daily basis?
Yeah, that one is easy actually, because for him, obviously, I actually approached him and told him, like, okay, I'm serious about the Kora and I really want to pursue this as a very serious thing in my life. And so I knew that I needed him to teach me to really get to where I wanted to get to. And I also knew that I needed his approval and his support. And so when I always remember this, and I quote it so many times for me, he told me that he said he would teach me, and he would teach me as his child, not as his daughter. He just made it clear, you are my child, and I'm going to see it like that. But he did say to me, he said, it's very important that you aim to be a good and a great Kora player, not a great female. Just a great Kora player. He said, I don't want to, when I close my eyes, I do not want to hear this is a woman playing the Kora. I just want to know this is a good Kora player. And he told me that's your mission at the very start. So that was my goal from the beginning. So I always remember that. So that was like quite a big mountain for me. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it out. About 8 years ago,
we apologize to the viewers and the listeners. We are having a great difficulty with the internet. You know, the guest is breaking up so bad. Can you? So now we're having. If you can hear me, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you. I think
okay.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, the network is not strong enough. We apologize for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. Is the network, the quality of the network is indeed terrible.
It really is.
But
Yeah. Apologies. I'm based
no.
I'm based in a very rural area here. We are yet to get internet properly across this country. So hopefully soon that's another priority.
Yeah. No, totally, you're fine. We run into similar problems all the time, even for people that live in the urban metropolis. But we are back to have you. We are glad to have you here, Sona. You did mention that you approached your dad when you realized that this is something that you probably would want to take up with a great deal of seriousness. I wanted to ask you, what was that moment? What was the trigger for you? When did you realize that this is no longer a hobby, but it's something that you really want to take absolutely seriously as a life path?
Yeah, that happened. Actually, it happened after the release of a first album that I did. I did like a preliminary album when I was in university in the UK, and I kind of wasn't sure where I was supposed to be going musically. So I felt at that time, even though Kora was something I was always playing and always learning, but I didn't feel that Kora would get me anywhere in Europe. And people used to tell me that, you know, if you are playing this instrument, you know, the audience is very small. People don't know what you're singing and what you're playing. So I tried to kind of then create a sound that was a little bit more mainstream. And mix that with what I was doing, and I released that album. And I remember I had a few people around me who were very like older than me and who I looked up to. And I remember there was a person that I treated as somebody that always gives me good advice, you know. And I remember him telling me, yeah, it's a good album, it's a good album. But he said, like, the way he said it was like, I'm not quite sure, it feels like you're searching for something, but the thing you're searching for is already right in your hands. You just have to pursue it. And I think that was like the trigger point for me when I realized what he was saying is, you know, stop trying to be something. Just do the thing you're most passionate about, right? Your love is in the Kora, your love is in Mandeng music, then just do it. And whatever comes will come. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I decided that I prefer to be honest to my own passion and have 10 people that like me than millions of people who like me when I'm not being honest to myself. So that's when I decided to drop everything and go. And I flew to Norway, and I was like, yeah, this is me, and I'm ready. And I'll take this seriously, and this is gonna work. And I don't care whether I'm successful or not. I'm doing something that I know is true.
Well, it looks like we've lost Sona again. The network has been really, really terrible, guys. We really apologize. Yeah, I don't know if Sona can hear it, but yeah. Hello, Sona, can you hear me?
I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah. We haven't the line keeps the network keeps dropping so bad, and sometimes we find very, very difficult to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So yeah, I think what we will do is we'll just plow through it and see. You're saying something really, really important, and I really I'm personally interested in your story, but I also want our audience, the Gambian audience that follow Bitilo, to really get to know your journey. I think it's an interesting journey, Sona. So now I wanted just to look at the bit about being the first female Kora player. You did mention that as part of your interaction with your dad, it was important to him for you to see yourself as a Kora player and not necessarily a female Kora player.
Exactly.
But I wanted us to take a step back to look at it with the benefit of hindsight now. Do you have a clearer understanding of why there had been no female Kora player for centuries? And what is it that it truly took you to break that barrier?
Yeah, I mean, I think I often like to correct people on this. You know, there are women who have within this culture, you know, played the Kora, all right, and but what the difference is, what I've done is to take this as a profession and to take this at a level that I wanted to become a virtuoso, like a soloist on this instrument. I didn't want to just play the Kora to accompany me singing, or, you know, that became a mission for me to be my main instrument, right? And that would be the instrument that I would gain international recognition as a Kora player, as a performer, and as a professional Kora players. So I think for me, I often give context on women coming into this role, that music in Manding, as it has in many other African cultures, is innately connected to social structures, right? Music is not entertainment, right? It is a part of the fabric of the culture and the society. It is like the language. It's like it has currency, and
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. So I'm just dropping. I'm wondering whether it might be good to substitute the audio with a call, but let me know if that might be better.
Yes, probably that's what. Yeah, we can try that option too. I think we can try that option. That should work perfectly well. Let me see if I can have. Okay. All right. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I think that should work. That should be fine. So we can just
And use the audio.
okay. All right. Thank you very much, Sona. So yeah.
I was just saying that I mean the context that I was saying for women taking up this tradition is really more about the fact that music is so connected to its function, right? Music is extremely functional. And in the history of this tradition, women have had very defining roles within the culture, and they still do actually. And so within the role of what women took, and again, we are dealing with a tradition that has roots in empire expansion, empire building, right? And the spirit of this tradition, right? The reason that makes you to pull out money, it's still that feeling of patriotism, it's still that feeling of pride, national pride, even though maybe national is not just about the Gambia, it's something much bigger than that, because this is about, it had its roots in the Malian Empire. Mm-hmm. And so women, of course, were not people that went to the battlefield out there, right? Women were not people that were sacrificed to be killed in war. Mm-hmm. And so the music was innately connected to empire building and expansion and the role of kings and so on. And so women's roles took very much a place within the royal courts, right? And this is why women are very much in that sector as singers, as people who praise the king, and that's something that was done within the royal court, so to speak, but not on the battlefield. And I think it's very important to remember, for its history and its legacy and its roots, why it has been a male tradition, rather than getting sort of too wrapped up in the idea that it is, anti-female. It is actually, interestingly, pro-female, because people are willing to send their women out to battle. So I think we have to look at it in the context of understanding and respecting the tradition and the social structures. What I do raise to the table now, and it's very important to me that people understand, I am by no means disregarding the history of a tradition that has been rooted in the history that it is, and that I'm here because of that. What I am questioning is that social structures have now changed, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. And we are no longer, as Kora players or as griots, male griots, I'm saying, they are no longer going to the battlefield. They are no longer going to fight. They are no longer going to, expand empire and so on, right? We are musicians who go to the studio, who go on the stages and so on and so forth. So the whole structure of society has very much changed. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is we are now in a position where we face a new threat, not a threat from a neighboring nation who might come and conquer us.
Invaders, yeah.
We're now facing a new threat where we have cultural invasion, where we have foreign cultures who are implanting themselves on our existing cultures, which, as I said earlier, has happened to many other nations in this continent, where we've lost our culture, lost our traditions, musical and otherwise, because we've allowed other cultures to come in and dominate. And all generations that are now trying to work on their own traditions because they feel they're relevant, they're not modern, they don't give them freedom to criticize society. There's that idea that the griot tradition now is only about praising. But this is what this album was about that I released, was the themes that I was talking about in that album. I go back to the origins of this tradition. You have to understand the role of griot was not to this existing situation. It was to be the only ones that had the power. The griots, the only ones that could speak to those power and tell them when they're going wrong, right? Guide them and be that voice between the people who don't have the power to speak to those in authority, and to be that bridge between the people and those in power. And I think that's something that we don't do enough now, right? I don't like the fact that there is now the too much of just praise singing, right? Whoever's in the seat gets praised no matter what you're doing, right? I think we should remember that role and the critical role that griots played, both politically and socially, to make sure that we are continuing to be at the front edge of development of both cultural, political, economic, social, you name it. We should be at the front line because we have a unique ability to have thousands of people listening to just one person. And I can tell you, not many politicians can do that.
Yes.
But musicians can. Musicians can. And so that's why I see it as a responsibility for myself, and also a responsibility to inspire other musicians, especially from this tradition, to remember that's a critical role that we should be playing. We should not be sitting down just supporting whatever comes into play and being those people that in a sense have been insulted sometimes to say that we just praise so we get money. I think that's something we have to also critically start to look at.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was going to say that I grew up, just like most people probably listening to us, from suburban Gambia, back there in Wellingara. It's kind of not rural, but it's somewhere on the peripheries of urban Gambia. Back when I was growing up, we used to have huge jali kabilos, like jali compounds, where occasionally they will have this large ceremonial performances and things like that. Do you worry that the culture or the institution of Jalia as we know it is, fast fading away?
Absolutely it is. Especially as we see the generations crossing over now. We have a new generation already coming up under me. I mean, 2 generations, 3 generations already are coming up now under me. So I'm already getting into that, old bracket. But it's like, we are seeing that. And unfortunately, I would say that, I'm not saying that I think it's wrong that young people are, exploring other musical forms and other musical genres. But I do think it's a problem when we see that it's replacing the existing heritage that we have, because there is no one left to carry it if there are not representatives from the next generation who are inspired enough to be able to carry that. And again, this is why I feel that's a role that I really critically feel I'm playing within education and as an artist, to really promote this. And now this comes back to what you mentioned about women. And I say that society is facing a different threat, right? The globalization is meaning that a lot of our cultures in Africa are fading. It's happening on a very fast rate. And this is why I say now women become important, because they occupy in some societies more than 50% of the population. And whereas it made sense that women had a different role then, they have a very important role now. Sure, that if it means we lose our traditions, that's the other to be the contribute to innovation, and it's we need to educate the people. How does it feel to this tradition? I say, well, I look as one who is looking at this and maintaining it. Somebody that's breaking it. I think people who are abandoning the tradition are people who are breaking the tradition. And so I think for me, it's also looking at it differently, thinking about it differently, and understanding we have a responsibility. We, all of us, have a responsibility to preserve traditions.
So your song titles, they carry deep meaning. Saya, Dunia, Duno, Fasia, Mama Muso. These are highly philosophical, songs with highly philosophical connotations. Where does your inspiration usually come from? Is it from life, from history, your observation around, and things like that?
So the first album, first year important, the meaning of that is really talking about the paternal heritage. And that at the end of the day is the very essence of this tradition, we inherit from the father's side. And so really that first album was really, in many ways, I see it almost as a homage to all of the big inspirations in my life, and a homage to the heritage that I have been lucky to carry, right? And the family that has supported me to do with what I'm doing with this tradition. The next album for me was now a very different story, because now I'm now also a torch bearer. The first album, I'm learning how to carry the torch. Now I'm a torch bearer, and there is a new generation that is coming up after me that I want to see surpass me. And so for me, this is really an album talking about the sense of accountability and the sense of responsibility that I have, but I also want to see others also take on to make sure that we contribute to social development, cultural development, and all the other types of development we need to see within our tradition, but also now a bit bigger than that, not just about Mandeng, not just about Gambia, but also Africa at large, because I feel that this is, I think, and I kind of sometimes push back on the branding of myself, because I think, historically we go through chapters, and a lot of people say to me, oh, you are Pan-Africanist. And I say, well, Pan-Africanism was a movement that was very relevant at the times that it needed to be in place. And I think in some ways we need to even reterm that now, because there's a lot of connotations that may take it sideways. And we need to make sure that we rest on the shoulders of Pan-Africanism, not just to continue to stay within the box. We have more work to do. And so, yes, I do feel it is incredibly important that we start to look outwards from our continent, from our countries, to look at what are we representing as Africans, not just as Gambians or as even Mandinkas, but what are we representing as African people representing this continent on the global stage. And I think that for me is the new album really talking about that. And I draw the experiences from what I live every day here, working with young Gambians and seeing what it takes to nurture young Africans to grow up knowing who they are, being proud of who they are, but most importantly, having the tangible skills, knowledge, and tools to make something for themselves here in the country without necessitating them to have to leave just to make ends meet. And this is where I talked earlier about human rights, right? Everybody, no matter where you're from, deserves to be able to put food on their families, to have a roof over their head. And that for me is something that I see as an equal right for every single human. And if people are unable to achieve that in their country, we cannot blame them for seeking to do that in our media. But what I do say is it's sad that we are seeing too many young people having to make that decision. What are we doing as a nation to make sure that they are never having to be confronted with that choice? And that's where I see that responsibility. I'm talking about responsibility for artists and so on. But it shows that theme of what responsibility are we, rather than putting the finger of blame to that people are taking the option. What are we doing to put them in that position in the first place? And so this is why my work in education is, for me, so fundamental, to help to actually contribute to giving young people tangible choices that doesn't put them in that situation in the first place.
We will definitely come to the great deal of efforts that you are putting into the education sector in the Gambia. But you mentioned, obviously, you have a great catalog of records. My personal favorite right now on my playlist is Dunia. It used to be Mama Muso because of the connection that I had with I have with my grandma. I love Gambia too. I think that's an all-time best. Do you have a personal favorite, and why?
Ooh, you're asking me to pick between my children.
Well,
it's like that.
Yes.
Every child has their own character, and if I say I like this one, I'm also doing a disservice to another one.
Right.
And also, it's a journey. When you write songs, you are reflecting a particular place you are at that time in your life. And so I would say it's not that I have a favorite. I would say which ones do I relate to mostly now because of where I am right now. And obviously there are going to be songs from the new album because they are more closely connected to the place I am in my life right now, where I'm very involved in education and so on. So I think what I would say though is I think my big mission is to take Funding Care on the road. I want to get Funding Care on the stage because of course that's a huge theme for everything that I'm doing, and what I represent mostly is actually all to do with youth. And it's also a song that is challenging. It's very challenging, and I think it's a song that I put a lot of technical. I put a very technical approach to writing that song, because I actually wanted to challenge why is it that, there was an uncomfortability for me that, whilst we talk about the misconceptions that Europeans often have when they come into African music, I'm very vocal about that. But we also sometimes have this uncomfortable feeling when I talk to Africans in the diaspora, people of the diaspora who are, like in African Americans, or people in Africans in Europe and so on, who are not as closely connected to African music, but their own forms, like they're connected to jazz and the blues and all the rest of it. And I've always felt a little bit like they too can sometimes look at African music and kind of consider it as like the predecessor to their music, so they kind of see it as more simple. And they made it more complex, like in jazz. Now jazz is more complicated, you know, and African music is a little bit more simplistic. And that thing for me has always kind of sat very uncomfortably for me. So I wanted to write a song that I was like, you know what, I've heard people saying this, where African music is only in 4 and 6, but jazz is more complicated because they write in 11 and 7 and 5 and all these complicated time signatures, and it's only in genres like the jazz and African Americans that can do that. And I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna write a song when you listen, you will say from, you're gonna say, no, I recognize this is a song that is from this tradition. Put it in 7. I'm gonna put it in 7 and know it's in. But it's funny when something's not right. And so deliberate. And so I put a lot of time, thought into how I was going to construct a song to push the boundary of what mundane music can do, which we see as this old ancient tradition that's, past. I'm going to put it right at the cutting edge and challenge those people who say that music from this tradition is only in 4. And you can't put it in complicated time signatures. I'm going to do it. And you won't even know I'm doing it until you play it. And it's so funny because in the university, in Berkeley University in Boston, I remember there was a class, they took a class and they taught the students how to play that song. And many of the students, literally, until they came to the class and they came to play it, that's the time they realized, oh, there's something not right with this song. And I said, yes, exactly. So now come again and talk to me about complicated. So yeah, I like pushing the boundaries and proving that this tradition is not like just stuck in the past. This is something that is stuck in the past only so far as we allow it to be stuck in the past. We should be always innovating and looking at ways to keep this something that is always modern and relevant to us also today.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to break down one of the verses from that song, the Funding Care song. I love it. But like I said, right now where I am, just like you, Dunia is kind of like, what gets me through my personal assignments, my, nighttime walk and things of that sort. Funding Care, what is your favorite verse or stanza from it? Break it down for us.
Well, okay, so this song is really rooted in the failure, I would say, of education systems to realize why they exist in the format that they exist currently in Africa. This is not just a Gambian thing. This is Africa, right? And so, I start the song by saying, it's 400 years later, right? Meaning, since the time when this story of exploitation and oppression has begun on this continent. And we celebrate our, independences across Africa, 60 years and so on across the different countries. And yet I find that it's, in a sense, we are celebrating something that is like the box, the shell, but we haven't got the true meat of it inside. Is still not, we haven't attained it, right? And this is why Funding Care is talking about the fact that education has to be geared towards growing the future leaders of tomorrow, right? It has to be geared towards what they need to actually grow this land, to grow this nation, to build this nation in the best interest of this nation and for the best interest of these people. It doesn't start from the day you get power. It starts from the day that you are born and raising that person to be aligned with what it means to become a leader. And that's something I think we fail in, I say, many countries in Africa. We do not raise our leaders. We become leaders and then we have to figure out what to do next. And when we have so much work to do, why are we allowing that to happen? This is a science. Growing a nation is a science. It's not a miracle. It's not something that happens by magic. It is a science. It's a mathematical. It's logic. It's planning. There's a lot of stuff. We fail to do that from day one. In front of the teacher, who is teaching them the foundations of what it means to be successful and to grow your nation. And so this is, for example, I talked about the fact that, our culture, our heritage, all of these things, we throw them, we abandon them, we leave them, right? We don't treasure them, we don't see them as things that we can be proud of. And so this is why I'm talking about and I end one of my favorite phrases where I say at the end that, the future of our nation is in your hands. It's not in ours. It's not in mine. Right? This young generation after me, they're already here, and they're ready. And so the future is absolutely in their hands. But what are we doing about that? What are we doing about that handover process? Are we equipping them, or are we finding ways to control them? And so this is why me funding here is symbolic of pretty much everything I'm doing. Why you asked me to about collaboration. Well, this is the reason why I haven't done much music in the last 10 years. This is the reason, because of the fact that this is not something I just want to sing about. It's not just something I want to write a song about. This is something I'm actually doing every day of my life. And I mean every single day of my life for the last 8 years. This is all I have been doing. So it needs to come with intent. And again, relating this song to Duno is really, again, artists taking up responsibility, artists leading by example. It's not enough for me just to sing a song. Right. What are you doing? That's what I want to ask. What are you doing? Right. You can talk about it, absolutely, but I need to know you're living it. Right, and that's very important to me, because there's a temptation, and I'm not just talking about Gambians. I'm talking about artists around the world, every part of the world. This is a problem we have, where artists, they see themselves almost outside of society. It's almost like, okay, what do? You talk about politics, you talk about economics, you talk about this, and then you say, no, I'm an artist. I'm just an artist. I'm not in politics. I'm not in. That's a problem for me. Because you have more power than any of those people in your society. I mean, it's the only people, right? As artists, human beings. If we look at humanity, right? And it's not Gambians, but there's the only situation you can see one human being, and you can see 500,000 people. If that one human being says, "Raise your hand," those 500,000 people will all raise their hand. Yeah. Whatever you say do, the audience will do. And that's a power that requires responsibility. And that's what I'm saying, It requires responsibility, and it also requires knowledge, and it also requires accountability to understand, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to use that opportunity to teach people nonsense? Or are you going to use that opportunity to actually give them something that will be useful for them? And so, I talked about 2 songs there, but
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say.
Why do you think most of the musicians and the artists that we have coming out of Africa, maybe to zoom in back home, to bring it a little bit closer to home? Is it a case of them not appreciating or understanding the power that they have? Why do you think they choose to limit themselves
in that way?
I mean.
When you say limit themselves, what do you mean exactly by
that? Because
I was kind of trying to build up on the concern that you mentioned, that most of them
tend to limit themselves.
don't tend to address the larger social problems we have, or to take a serious role as far as our social
development and awareness is concerned.
So I'm just trying to understand why do you think we don't have musicians and artists come out in the manner that you're talking about to represent, and participate and raise people's consciousness and like that.
Again, I would put this back down to education. Because people are only a reflection of their experiences. There are a few people who may break away from that. Even when they break away, there will be reasons why. I went through very reasons that pushed me to break away from that. Maybe I would have ended up in the same position, but I went through situations where I was confronted with a lot of hardship and a lot of discrimination. And that process of having and experiencing discrimination is what pushed me into the situation that I was like, I got to make myself wise. I've got to wisen up. I cannot get away with just saying I play music, right? Music is political. And I don't care what people say. Music is political because you are a human being talking, being able to speak to and influence other human beings. What could be more political about that? You understand? There's difference between politics and being political. There's difference. Right? And so I'm not talking about politicians, right? Governments and that. I'm talking about political in the sense of you are taking an active role in the progress, in the influencing in the direction of your society. That is a political movement. And by the very role that we take as artists, as being people who our objective to get followers, that's what our objective is. Otherwise, we cannot make it as a career. So that means we have following. And that is usually far greater than our politicians. And so that's why I say it is political. And I think we need to wisen up as artists. And when it comes to Gambia, I think no different to many other societies, we are not giving a lot of our artists who are not even artists yet, but maybe the future generation of artists, we're not exposing them to an environment that gives them the opportunity to think differently, think out of the box, right?
Think beyond showing off to your friends of how much money you have in a society where people are struggling just to eat, right?
That is something that I find is not helpful, right? Because showing, extreme wealth, right, in a society where that isn't the norm. I mean, it isn't the norm in pretty much most societies, right? Extreme wealth. There's always a minority of people, but you're getting people to be obsessed about pursuing wealth for the sake of wealth and status. Which is actually a very dangerous thing, rather than getting people to understand that you can build your entire nation, right? Which would mean that we would not have 5% extremely rich people and the rest of the country, 95% are extremely poor. Artists contribute to developing a nation where the average person has what they need to live a comfortable life. And so when I talk about motivate a community to build roads, right? Set up electricity systems, set water systems, not to boast about being in the latest Range Rover, wearing, I don't know what. I don't understand where that connects, you know what I mean? And I think that's my frustration sometimes, because what are we inspiring? And when I speak to my students, and this is where I get that sort of grounded feeling, when I speak to young people and I ask them, how does it make you feel when you see artists, especially, fellow Gambian artists, become successful and now they are doing well financially? What motivation comes across to you? And the majority of them say, it motivates us to get rich. It's not helpful. Right? I don't understand how it's helping us just to motivate to get rich. And we talk about corruption. That is corruption, right? Motivating us to get rich with a country that does not have basic needs, that is corruption. So what I'm saying is we need to start seeing ourselves as responsible citizens in a wider whole, where we start seeing that we have a functional role to play that will inspire young people to actually contribute to national development. And I think it's a very different mindset, and perhaps might not be so much about, boasting of one's wealth in order to get people jealous. They want to be you, or they just then try and find any means to get rich, which we see. This is not a Gambian problem. It's a problem so many nations across this world, America included, where it was wealth for the sake of wealth, and in America, as we know, there's a lot of violence attached to that quest for wealth. There's a lot of, drugs attached to that quest for wealth. And so I think that has to be questioned critically, and I'm grateful that Gambia has not used that point, but I don't know, it could.
It very well.
Very well. Sona, thank you very much indeed for
viewers and listeners joining us now.
This is
And I am Khalif
I am Khalif Fadera. For those of you tuning to us on radio back home in Gambia, you listen to Vibes FM 106.1 FM.
We are
here looking at Sona Jobarteh, the person, the artist, and her journey across the world. Sona, I want us to now shift our attention to global journey. What was the first moment outside of Africa when you thought to yourself, really, this is getting serious?
And what is the
one stage and city that stands out for you most so far from all the global performances that you have done so far?
I have to be honest. That's a very, very tough question. I have to be honest because
I don't think there was any,
like in my mind at least. I don't say there was. I can't say okay, this show is the turning point where everything changed.
Maybe I can say the most memorable performance I would say was early in my career too. One was at the Gambia. Was the first performance to me that was really stepping out on the stage for the first time in the Gambia as a Kora player. But then having the support of being on stage with my father, with my uncle, and family members as well. I think that for me was pivotal. It was not obviously the peak of my career, was just a start, but it was pivotal in making me feel that I have gained acceptance because the majority of my family were present at that show, and it made me feel that they were going to support it. Before then, I wasn't sure how they would take it because they were not sure. I don't think many people knew that I was really serious about the Kora. Nobody had really seen me play the Kora. So I was like, okay, this is a big moment for me, and are they going to look at me and think, what is this woman doing? Or are they, supporting and feeling, okay, what she's representing the family and we're going to support her. And so I think that for me was a big pivotal moment. And I remember it was the time I performed Mama Muso. That was the moment that the family just came to the stage. And I was like, I felt that so deep. Like, I was like, okay, nothing can stop me now. I don't care who's telling me that I can't do it. I don't care who's going to tell me, no, you shouldn't do it. I don't care, because now this is all that matters to me. And since I have this support network right here, the rest of them matter. And so I think that was probably the most important moment for me internally to go for it and to know about it. And I think secondarily after that, was not very long after that, was the first sort of major international stage.
Hello? Sorry, could you take that again? You said right after that because the call dropped. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now, I was saying that you were kind of moving to the second phase. I can do that again. Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, the second one. Yes, the second one was Africa Festival 2012 in Germany. Was so artists as on the stage. Again, a bit like the Alliance Franco one, which was obviously with that one, it was my family. But this time was in some way even more because these were like all of my major role models who were present because they were performing after me. And I'm talking Jelly Madi Tunkara, Tumani, Kasamadi Jobarteh. I'm trying to think now who else was there, but all of that network of Malian, top level players who I've been listening to since I was 8 years old or less,
and they were present and heard that show. And I remember Tumani saying to me, he said, I'm going to be listening to you. And I said, oh, no, please don't. I think that made me completely just destroyed. I was like, I wish he hadn't told me that because it really put me in a different state of mind at the show. But But I think, but it was such a pivotal moment for me because those were who I see, like I say, this tradition is built on the whole idea of, passing the baton or, supporting whoever's coming up next. And I think that's such a beautiful side of this tradition is those who are at the top of their game, the humility to continue to also still support those who are up and coming. And I was very much up and coming at that time. And yet the support they gave me, the confidence they gave me, the encouragement that they gave me that, what, we're behind you, we believe in you, we are representing that. For me, I think, again, it meant it just, you cannot put that into words. You can't put that into words. So I think those are probably two most memorable. They're not the peak of my career at all, but they're the most memorable, I think, in terms of just giving me confidence that I needed to really pursue this career.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sona. Tumani was such a delight listening to. I love Tumani. I pray that he continue to rest in peace. Sona, you mentioned humility. I think one of the most refreshing things about you personally is the great level of humility that you demonstrate. I speak for myself. For example, you could have lived anywhere in the world, yet you choose the Gambia as your home and base. Why was that decision so important to you?
Because
usually, if you pardon me to just add that, what we usually see of
generally not only
Gambians but Africans
of your standing, what they usually do would be to live in exotic destinations across Europe and America. But you choose to come back home and make Gambia your home. Why?
Well, I'm going to push back on this. I enjoy doing this because I think this illustrates the very reason of what it is that I do and what I believe in ultimately, right? And I like to question why it is a surprise that we should celebrate and value and treasure our own land. For me, there is nowhere better on earth. Nowhere that is more paradise, nowhere that is more fulfilling, nowhere that is greater than the place that I can see is
say that, and I is conditioning, right? Conditioning raised to always feel innately to always believe that when you something that is in your nation is almost a sacrifice, something that you are belittling yourself to do when you could have just found that Europe has developed of our nation. We have been buying to Europe, right, for centuries. So why would it be that I would want to go to the place that is feeding off the land where it grows in its originality? So I cannot see anywhere better in the world to be and more honorable to be and more paradise to be than the place that actually serves and feeds the world. We feed Europe culturally. We feed Europe economically. We feed Europe with our resources. They come from Africa. And so for me, I like to reframe the question as, why do you leave the place that feeds the entire planet to go and enjoy someone else's wealth that doesn't belong to you, that is starving your own people in order to benefit people that are not you? That's what I ask. So I like to answer that question by reversing it and saying, why is this surprising? And I know the answer why. I know why it's surprising, but I like to ask the question to reflect, make people reflect on why we should start looking at how we need to change our way of thinking. We are not coming back to Africa. We're going forward to Africa, right? We're not coming back to our home. We're going forward to our home. There is no European that will question, why are you coming back to Europe? Because why wouldn't you? This is the best place you can be as a European. And Africans should be saying the same thing as Africans. Why? We are Africans, so where should there be? There's any better than here, right? We are respected here. It's our home. This is the place that we have sun, we have water, we have everything we need, right? Europe, we don't have that. It gets freezing cold, right? It's not natural. for humans to survive in some of those climates, especially for Africans. So for me, this seems obvious. This is easy, right? This is a place that has the capacity to support Africans also in developing these countries. So I think one of the reasons why it is deprived is because people still keep seeing this as a place that we go back to rather than forward to. It's not a place that we take ownership of and feel proud of and feel that we are the luckiest people on earth to come from the Gambia or to come from Ghana or to come from Nigeria or Senegal, wherever it is that is your home. We should have that emotion. And this is what I instill within my students.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is what I instill. So none of my students will even answer that question if you ask them, why would you stay in your country? For them, they think, well, why wouldn't I? I mean, this is my home. I have a responsibility to grow this nation. I can see all of the amazing opportunities I have to be economically successful and to also contribute to national development with my own personal economic success. And that is something we have to instill within the mindsets of young Africans, just like in Europe they do. Right? Europeans all teach their children from the young age in schools to be proud to be British, proud to be American, proud to be French. We don't do that. We don't do that. And so this is why we ask those questions. Why would you come back home? And so for me, I would say, where else should I be except here? Where else should I be? And I ask everyone who isn't here, why are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you there?
Where else should I be? I think that's a very important question that all of us should reflect on. But like you said, Africa is home, and we shouldn't question why we should come back to Africa. But the next question that I have for you, Sona, is, obviously, like I said, you made Gambia your home. You spent a great deal of time in Gambia. But I must ask, do you ever feel that Gambians don't fully grasp the weight of your global journey? Or does that bother you at all, or does it motivate you? Hello?
Mission. Yeah, hello?
Yes,
Yeah,
can you hear me? Did you get my
I'm hearing you
question?
well. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got your question.
Okay,
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I said it doesn't bother me because it's not my quest. It's not my mission to become famous. It's not my mission to gain the approval and all the attention of people. I don't see that as my mission here in the Gambia. What I do see as my mission is to harness my international profile in order to redirect my finances and my energy, and also the needed support from around the world to invest in the development of this country. And so I harness my musical career for a very particular reason, right? And this is why I'm not bothered, because I know what counts here in the Gambia. And for me, what counts more than anything in the Gambia here is knowing that I was an integral part of national progress and development. And that is in the sector of education. And for me, I don't care what it is that people want to say about my music. I really don't care. What I really care about is what impact am I having on a generation of young people who I will leave behind. I will be gone before they even peak in their lives, right? And I want to know that I have given them as much as I can, and as much opportunity as I can, and as much empowerment as I can to make sustainable development in this country. I want to see a generation that does not have to think about basic needs. And that is a mission for me. And the little contributions I can make in my life to making sure that becomes a reality, I'm going to continue to sacrifice. So when people talk about, oh, your songs, it feels like a very small kind of conversation. I'm like, you know what? It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. And I understand that music people enjoy, and obviously people want to hear it. But I think people need to understand my real mission here, right? My real mission is development and making sure we contribute to that in the ways that we can. For me, it's in education. And I use my music as a means to succeed in that mission of mine. And this is why I focus on performing abroad and gaining as much recognition as I can internationally, because I have actually financed this institution sole-handedly for the past 10 years with no support from this government, no support from Gambian institutions, you name it. I have financed it. Not a single student from this institution has paid a single dollar seat to attend school for the last 10 years. And that is the credit to my success internationally, being able to redirect all of my earnings to keeping these young people in school. So for me, when people want to question that, it doesn't touch me.
Mhm. I think that is really profound. Just like I said, you could have focused only on your global success, but you choose to invest in education in the Gambia, and you've spoken so passionately about it. And I've seen you speak, as much with the same passion elsewhere. Why is it so important to you personally to invest and try to reorientate our education system?
Important because in until look at the problems we have with our education systems. We have systems that bear very, very, very strong legacy of the colonization of Africa, and the fact that young people go through education system in Gambia. Let's be specific about the Gambia for now, although I can remind people this is not a Gambia specific problem. This is a problem, unfortunately, across this continent to greater and lesser degrees. Gambia is no different. And here in the Gambia, we still undergo an education system that innately teaches young people to revere our former colonizers, right? And that is a very deep-rooted message that we don't ever have to verbalize, but it is experienced through the everyday experiences of students going to school. There is an automatic, connection between being educated and being Europeanized. And what we are actually doing when people say, especially here in the Gambia, people like saying, oh, this person is not educated. And I like to ask, in what? In being European and Westernized, or educated in what they're good at? There's a difference there, right? There's many Gambians here who are very educated in the thing that they are excellent at, but they may not necessarily be able to read and write, or they may not necessarily be able to do the same mathematical equations as somebody else could do in grade 12. But does that mean we should use the term educated? And the only reason why we use that term educated is because we are inheriting that colonial mindset that the only worthwhile people in this country are people who have been educated in the Western system. So look at my grandfather. Is he uneducated?
No.
That's the question I'm asking. This is what I'm saying. So we have to really question, what do we mean when we really use that? Because he was a master, right? There are countless people who have come from America, from France, from all over the world to study my grandfather and have gone back to their countries to get PhDs. And yet my grandfather was not awarded a PhD. Why? And I was angry I'm still angry about that, right? Who gets to say who deserves a PhD? Is it the one who can write about someone, or is it the one who actually does it? My grandfather did it, right? He lived it. He mastered his craft. But the people who can write about him get a PhD? That's my question. And we need to look again at who awards those recognitions, who gives those qualifications, who gets to say who is the master, who gets to say who's a doctor or professor, right? And so for me, we have to start redefining that, and we can't do that until we gain ownership of our education systems. And that's what I'm trying to do here through the Gambia Academy is we are working towards a point where I can say that we issue our own accreditation. And our accreditation is not whether you can speak English better than anyone else, or you can write a book better than any French person, or you name it. But it is, are you a master at your craft? But still understanding that, there still needs to be other points of reference to that. I always talk to my young musicians here at the Academy, and I say, if you want to be a successful artist or a Kora player, believe me, the only thing you do in life cannot be playing the Kora, right? Not in this modern day and age, right? You can practice 15, 16, 20 hours a day if you want, and you're still going to be stuck playing in hotels. So we do have to educate people more holistically to understand that to be successful as an artist, you must know much more than just playing your instrument. However, what I'm still saying, what we choose to value, and unfortunately in the West, they value justice and identity more than being able to do something. That has reevaluated and a little bit. I was, yes, it be important for me because right now we have a system where we are totally indoctrinating young people to be setting them on a trajectory to basically in the future leave their country, seek for success elsewhere. And that's where I talk about accountability. We're responsible for that. Those who have the ability to actually make a change to education systems, and those who don't, we should take responsibility for that.
Thank you very much, Sona Jobarteh. You spoke so passionately about social justice, about the importance of politics in our everyday lives. In fact, you did mention that music itself is political and that everybody is political. So, the last question I have for you, is there ever a bigger role for you in Gambia beyond music, even in politics? Is that something you've thought about? Or do you think your contribution is family elsewhere? I guess what I'm trying to say is because you've broken a lot of barriers, certainly with the Kora, attain global success. Are you thinking of breaking, into another area of life? For example, let's say politics.
Well, I think you say for example, but I think you are specifically talking about politics, right?
Yes.
You're trying to be diplomatic, but yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. I've been asked that so many times, and I can tell you I have been so tempted, especially when it has come from other politicians, not obviously from the Gambia, but outside of the Gambia, who have very strongly pushed me to go into politics. But I don't know. I have reservations about that because, as I said, it's not necessarily being a politician that is necessarily the only way to make political change in your country. I believe there are other spaces that are as equally important as the politicians that are in our government. There are equally important spaces to occupy within other sectors. And I think for me right now, the only interest I have is in the sector of education, and making sure that I have a very vital role to play within the education sector in this country. And it doesn't necessarily have to be through becoming, sort of ordained as a politician, because as I say, I don't need a title to do the work I'm doing.
Right.
If I become a politician tomorrow, it won't change what I'm doing. I will be doing it as a politician or not. And so it obviously helps to get the support from politicians and from the governments in place, and that's something that I do like to raise awareness about. It helps when you get support, and it's not made more difficult to do things. And I think that sometimes has been a reality for me. It's not always been the easiest here. I think mainly because probably too that there isn't full understanding of what I'm actually about and what I represent and the work that I do. And I think I've been kind of misbranded a lot of times as, this Kora player that just plays internationally and doesn't perform in the Gambia. And I think that for me is a huge oversight of what I actually do and my contributions. And I like to be seen far more for the work that I do in terms of social change, and in infrastructure and educational development. And interestingly, most other countries in the world recognize exactly what I'm doing, and I have gained so many amazing platforms, and, from being keynote speakers to ambassadors to organizations in the sector of education. And yet something that is yet to be recognized here in the Gambia. So I think it's something that I struggle with a little bit. Not a little bit, I struggle with it a lot, and I find it frustrating when I come back here to the Gambia and then people just start talking about the Kora. Okay, it's bigger than that, right? And I kind of, But in some ways too, I also have to take accountability to some degree, because I feel sometimes I'm so wrapped up with the work that I'm doing every day that I don't take time to do exactly what we're here doing today, speaking about it on the media and bringing more attention. So I take this opportunity to thank you for this platform, because it is allowing, more people to become more aware of what I actually do and what is really important to me beyond the Kora and beyond. And I think there was an article written in the newspaper in France, and I really love that title that they put on that article, which they said Sona Jobarteh Beyond the Kora. And I think that is for me exactly it. It is beyond the Kora. I'm not overlooking the Kora, but we see the Kora is a means, it's a tool, it's something that I use to get the ears of the world to listen to what I have to say. And music is incredibly powerful to do that. But then obviously I have to take up those opportunities to share. And these platform like this is a beautiful opportunity for Gambians also to get to understand more about what I do and to understand what really matters most to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been our pleasure and honor to host you and have you here on Bitilo. We would love to, of course, with time permitting, to, have this rendezvous again, probably, in Gambia, maybe. But it's been a pleasure.
I understand you're not based in the Gambia, right?
Yes, at the moment I'm currently not here, and that is why we have not been able to have a sit down and talk about this important conversation. But I think it's been very eye opening. We have a lot of people watching us both on YouTube and Facebook right now, and Fakru Sila is one of them. He's a huge follower of our program and a huge Sona Jobarteh fan. He said Sona is a very clever woman. Congratulations to her for her overall success. The Gambia is indeed very proud of her. We are very proud of you, Sona. I'm so you've had this a million times, but for some of us that live in the diaspora, you are our go-to person whenever and wherever we go, and people say, "Can you show me music from Gambia?" And I think that speaks a great deal to the quality of the music that you produce, the great deal of technical complexity behind it, but also the messaging, everything as a whole. We are incredibly proud. Myself, as you can tell, I'm a huge personal fan of yours. I listen to you religiously. Yes, and it's the honor of my life to host you here on Bitilo. Sona, you talked about this is definitely my last question. You talked about sometimes the struggles you have, reconciling your global fame versus probably what you described, correct me if I am wrong, as to how, I don't want to use the word undervalued, but how underutilized you are in Gambia. Maybe, I don't know if that's a very good way to put it. Do you have plans of doing something about that? For example, I think I speak for I know I speak for a lot of people when I say we would love to see an annual Sona Jobarteh festival in the Gambia, for example. You know what I mean? Where, let's say, for example, every December, everyone will look forward to coming back home to a Sona Jobarteh festival. Is this something that you've thought about? Or I guess more broadly, what I'm trying to address is, what do you have in mind going forward? You did mention a few of them, obviously, in the interview, but are there other things that you have in mind, that can kind of, bridge that bond between Sona Jobarteh and the Gambian audience that loves you so much?
Well, I mean, speaking specifically to the
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, were you able to get the question?
Yeah. Okay. Asking if you were referring specifically to Gambia following my music, right? Specific music.
Yes, music, yeah. And everything else that you do. I mean, you did talk about, for example, the keynote addresses you deliver all around the world, the global recognitions that you have beyond music. For example, being invited in land centers of excellence, universities across the world, and things of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Sona Jobarteh Festival, I always say something that I think is very important, that I wouldn't see myself as someone that can attach my name to something like that,
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is because of the fact that, again, I'm going to refer again, right? I am only here for the time that I'm here, right? And we must understand that before me was my grandfather, before me was my father, before me that, we have so many, we are in a continual lineage of incredibly great icons that we need to continue to celebrate. And so I think that for me, in order to stay truthful to the reality of my life in a very long sequence of history, I am just one bead in this necklace. And I happen to be here now, but I am just one bead in this necklace. And my bead is no greater than any others. And so I think it would detract away from truly what I am trying to promote, which is to value our culture, our traditions, and our history, and also to have a sense of accountability for affecting the minds of young people in being far more politically aware of their standing in this world. And that is a mission that is far greater than any individual, including myself. And it's more a matter of me being lucky to be able to take part in that journey, lucky to be able to contribute to that unfolding story that will be continued to be told in generations to come. And so, yes, I would say I would love to be part of something, but to brand something as a Sona Jobarteh festival, I think goes beyond my own moral compass. Within the context of what I'm doing. But I've always been very interested in, having a festival that does celebrate our culture, because, as I said, we are in, and I can speak from experience, but I'm not going to name the countries, but there's certain countries I've been to in Africa who have expressed how they are actually envious of our situation, where we can name, right? We can name even songs, right? We can name people who lived over 600-700 years ago, and we can trace that lineage all the way today. And that is not something that every nation in this continent can do.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's, for me, something we absolutely must celebrate, absolutely must use as a catalyst for not just Europeans and Westerners, but we must actually promote that to other Africans, because we are inspiring other people from the continent. I think that's one of the most important things one of the most touching things that about my career that I was not expecting necessarily, was the amount of support I've had from other African nations all across the continent, who have said to me, even from the Gambia song, like, if you look, people, what they say, and the amount of people that come to me after shows when I do the signing sessions, who are from, truly all over the continent, and they sing me a song, because they say that even though it's about God, they said it because we too are Africans, and song, we feel the pride. We were Gambian, but we see it like we are all one family.
Yeah.
I think that's for me the thing that will it actually humble. Some people make even, because it makes you understand how big this is and how important what we do to contribute to how important that is, right? And so I'd say that, I mean, yes, the future for me right now, I am seriously focused on the expansion of my curriculum model, because this is what I dedicate, 90% of my time into, is writing curriculum, developing curriculum for this country and for other nations in Africa. And so my major mission in the foreseeable future is to get this curriculum into as many schools as possible in the Gambia and then outside of the Gambia. That's my real, if that is the only thing that I next achieve in my life, I would die happy. I'm telling you, if I don't write another album, I feel like I've done enough, at least to move the pen a little bit, to say that, okay, whatever my father did, I've also contributed to what he did. So I feel like I've done enough. Of course, there's more to do, but I think for me now, my main mission, as I said, curriculum development, making sure that I can contribute to seeing that there are other artists who now take the pen further than I ever could, And I think it's important we also recognize that once the next generation are on our heels, we don't hold on to it too long. And I think that's something that is very important, that sometimes can happen, especially here in Africa. We can hold on to our power too long. And I think there is a huge empowerment and a huge strength in knowing when to let go, knowing when to give it. And I think for me, I'm at that stage of my life already where I'm looking at ways to make sure I give rather than trying to hold on, absolutely.
Yeah, and I tell you, you're doing a great deal of work in that regard with the academy. I've seen stuff that you do online, and I've seen the impact that you've also had on the kids that look up to you at the school. And some of the videos I've seen, they've you can tell from the smiles on their face that your presence, your impact, your presence in their life is having a great impact. So thank you very much, Sona. We are very much happy to have you. Thank you for the time you took to join us.
Sorry for the internet, and I say that this is just as important, right? I've got technicians growing up in this academy, and I tell them, listen, you guys, you need to improve our internet. Please.
I know we need more. Yes, we need a lot of more technicians in Gambia. Absolutely. But I don't know whether you have any shows coming up in Seattle area, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest. I would be thrilled to have an opportunity. Yes.
Yeah, at the moment, being very honest with you, we actually had to pull out of our US plans, immediate ones, because of everything going on with the States at the moment. It's really, really quite concerning. So yeah, so it's, at the moment it's uncertain times when it comes to the United States. We were supposed to have a tour in April, and that's come out of the calendar. So at the moment we are weighing up whether or not we will be able to come in the fall time.
Yeah.
But again, it's all down to what's going on with all of this crazy immigration situation, and we have no idea at this moment in time, sadly.
That's a shame, but we'll keep an eye. Thank you very much, Sona. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Anytime you come, please come and visit us.
We definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks for your time. Well, listeners and viewers, that does it for tonight's episode of Bitilo. We thank you for being with us, but at the same time, we would like to apologize for the challenges that we've encountered throughout this conversation regarding the low quality of internet. I think it's quite rather unfortunate, but there's not much that we can do. But we'll do our best to redo this again with Sona, probably somewhere in Gambia or somewhere elsewhere in the world. But regardless of the case, we are excited that we were able to get through the interview. At least with much of the interview, we managed to do it on the call. Kal jay kal tentu dorong alal bari malom falli fadera kal bolo sei nga kolea men soto internet wala karola dorong ka fale dorong ko be katodang be kelale kaje ko de nin Sona si koteke nga kachani fanan soto koteke kachani akono fanu danga kujama karanje bari atumando bato mbe silo sotlale kasi koteke fawe kila Gambia de fawe kila dula ko dunia kono bari kontanta ka sewota ka Sona soto jam banko banna balemu mobile ka kontan mobile ka sewo ni akan moy nsafale ko ala baraka alama tilo to diala alama betan kala kala ni kala to lambe murana la nyako takere ni arjuma nala ngakacha soto jang amen kere kerali kacha dima ba kankulala na dulalto alka kibaro soto da men to Bitilo la karora alama tilo to diala alama betan kala kala ni kala to la wassalam ala baraka bake